Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we are looking at the new expansion, Kobolds versus Catacombs. So we've looked at all of the hero cards. It's time now to look at the neutral cards, which you can see them by clicking crafting mode, include those uncraftable cards while we're at it, and then click the filter to Kobolds so we filter down just to that. So we've looked at Druid, Hunter, Mage, Paladin, Priest, Rogue, Shaman, Warlock, and Warrior. And for the most part, there's some definitely interesting cards, but I'm not seeing any major synergies because each one of these expansions for the heroes only gives 10 more cards. What I now need to do is look at the neutral cards and see if there's any general cards that synergize with strategies that might only be playable by one or two heroes, or if there's just maybe a bigger strategy with the neutral cards that they're working towards. Now the first one's not going to add any information to that because it's just a regular card. It's a 1 mana, 1 attack, 3 health beast, Dire Mole. So another beast card, if there is a 1 mana, 1 attack, 3 health creature that's not a beast in your deck and you're trying to play beasts, which would be helpful for like Scavenging Hyena, you definitely want to replace it there. Otherwise this card really doesn't add anything to the Hearthstone in general. Next we have a 1 mana, 1 attack, 1 health minion called Feral Gibberer. After this minion attacks a hero, add a copy of it to your hand. I don't know how you would be able to do that. This feels like a card that you'd have to play for 1 mana, then play a spell on it to give it charge, to attack the enemy hero, to then summon another copy of it. Yes, if you could get several of these randomly on your field, they would be interesting and maybe helpful, but they would have to be on your field and severely outnumber your opponent's number of minions and or have charge or the ability to attack the hero. The only way I see this comes into play is with something that de-evolves your minions. So say you had some other random 2 cost minion and you de-evolve it to a 1 cost minion and you got this. Then having several of those on the field would start to make sense. But not even that much sense then. Interesting card just because it's a little wacky, but not something I particularly play. Next we have a 1 mana, 2 attack, 3 health minion called the Gravel Snout Knight. Now I assume all of these are going to be minions because I don't think there are any neutral spell cards, which it's a little odd that there aren't neutral spell cards or weapon cards or you know, secret cards, trap cards, or anything like that. We also aren't seeing any new quests. The idea of the quests cards have been introduced and then ignored now completely, and that's kind of a shame. They could have made some more of those. Anyways, this is a 1 mana, 2 attack, 3 health minion, Gravel Snout Knight. Battlecry, summon a random 1 cost minion for your opponent. So this might be one of those random 1 cost minions you summon for your opponent, which would be bad. Next we have a 1 mana, 0 attack, 2 health elemental, a minion called Wax Eternal. It has Taunt and Divine Shield. It's not a bad card to play. This actually is pretty good because if you're playing an elemental deck, 1 more elemental is helpful. This would be a great turn 1 elemental card to play. It has Taunt and Divine Shield even if you're not playing elementals, and there's several cards that probably cost more than 1 mana to get Taunt and Divine Shield and 2 health. So this card is probably replacing a decent 2, 3, maybe even more other cards in the collection of cards in general. Like, if you have this probably has more value than some other similar cards. Next we have a 2 mana, 2 attack, 3 health beast called Plated Beetle. Death Rattle, gain 3 armor. There was a strategy that they're starting to establish for the Warrior, where you gain a bunch of armor. I believe, yeah. So that card would probably work well with the Warrior strategy towards getting a bunch of armor and using it for doing a couple things. Otherwise, it's a decent card. Anyways, like even if you're not playing it on a Warrior, getting 3 armor as a mage is almost impossible. So that's something to consider too. A lot of these cards, we've only gone through 5 cards, and I've already seen 2 that easily, maybe even 3, that easily replace other cards in other expansions as being better. At a certain point, they have to deal with power creep, though, and I don't know how you fix that unless you just put out a couple of expansions where all the cards are noticeably worse than previous versions of cards, and let the previous versions of cards become wild ban sets. Or you spin off Hearthstone and you go Hearthstone version 2.0 and you ban all the old cards and start over from scratch. Next we have a 2 mana, 1 attack, 2 health mech. Interesting, it's a mech because there's been very little love for mechs. It's been an abandoned style of minions since Goblins vs. Gnomes. So it's strange whenever they introduce 1 or 2 more. There's no synergy in standard play to play mechs. There's barely any synergy to play mechs in wild. It's called the Scorpomatic. Battlecry, destroy a minion with 1 or less attack. Not a terrible card because say your opponent plays a 1 or 0 attack minion on their first turn. You play this on your second turn, destroy it. You may gain the advantage for a turn or 2. Next we have a 3 mana, 3 attack, 2 health minion called Boisterous Bard. Battlecry, give your other minions +3/+1 health. Not too bad. It's a little low on health itself, but you could wait till later in the game to play something like this and potentially give 6 other minions +1 health, which probably wouldn't be necessary, but maybe. There's probably a lot of cards actually that would be better to have in your deck than this, and inherently we're getting to that issue where they need to introduce a new arena or a new style of play where you can play with 60 cards in your deck instead of 30, because having just 30 in your deck is getting very limiting now that there's so much variety and so many cards to pick from. Next we have a 3 mana, 4 attack, 3 health creature called the Dragon Slayer. Battlecry, deal 6 damage to a dragon. It's kind of unlikely on your 3rd turn that your opponent would have summoned a 6 health dragon. This almost seems like a card that would only be useful in very specific solo adventure gameplay, and not that useful in regular gameplay. But we may see with this new expansion more people playing dragons, so a Dragon Slayer might be a balance to that. Otherwise, it's a fine card to play anyways, so it just seems a little strange. I've noticed a lot of cards are doing a lot of damage, like 6 damage, 8 damage, 12 healing. Much higher numbers than what I've seen in previous expansions. Next we have a 3 mana, 3 attack, 3 health creature called the Fungal Enchanter. Battlecry, restore 2 health to all friendly characters. This would certainly work very well with the Priest deck, because there are characters that have you draw cards when a minion is healed, or gain attack when a minion is healed. Playing this early is a great card, And there's a 5 mana card that does a similar thing and has slightly more attack and slightly more health, but having this on top of that 5 mana card in that priest deck makes it useful. So one of my established decks seems like I could potentially build, improve upon one of my established decks. However, for the most part, I think tomorrow when I buy all the packs, I'm going to try to mainly focus on building decks using just Kobold cards and seeing what those look like, and building at least one deck for each hero. And after I do the pack opening video, and then we'll see if it's better or worse than what I have before. In the end, it's very possible I may not use either the new expansion deck rebuild or my old decks, but some kind of combination of the two. Next we have a 3 mana, 2 attack, 1 health Kobold Apprentice. Battlecry, deal 3 damage, randomly split among all enemies. Not a bad card, not crazy good, but I could certainly see it. This wouldn't help anybody playing an enraged deck because it wouldn't damage your own guys, but it would help just randomly hurting other people. Next we have a 3 mana, 2 attack, 4 health minion called the Lone Champion. If you control no other minions, gain Taunt and Divine Shield. Decent chance that you would have no other minions, so you can kind of assume that it's a Taunt and Divine Shield card. It doesn't really have any advantage of being written that way, but okay. I think I'd still probably play that unless you can find a different minion that costs 3 and has 2 attack and 4 health for Taunt and Divine Shield. Maybe that's one of the ways they're going to make more cards that have negative effects, negative battle cries, or exclusive effects. That way we can have worse cards but not make them feel like the worst versions of cards. Next we have a 3 mana, 1 attack, 3 health minion called Rummaging Kobold. Battlecry, return one of your destroyed weapons to your hand. I'm not sure that's really necessary. Even in my weapons deck, which is nothing but playing weapons almost, I'm still not sure that this would be a useful card. Maybe, maybe not. Next we have a 3 mana, 1 attack, 1 health, very low attack and health minion called Sewer Crawler, but it has a battle cry to summon a 2/3 giant rat. So effectively that makes that a 3/4 for 3 mana, and you have the benefit of it being 2 separate minions, so somebody can either attack the 2/3 or the 1/1, but if they only have 1 attack available to them, they can't hit them both. So that's actually a pretty decent card, and it's definitely a different way than just making it a 3/4 with no ability. Next we have a 3 mana, 1 attack, 2 health minion called the Shrieking Shroom. At the end of your turn, summon a random 1 cost minion. Let's see, and if you play that and it ends up being this guy, then there might be some synergy there. Might be some decent synergy actually. Next we have a 3 mana, 1 attack, 1 health beast with Divine Shield and Poisonous. You don't see that combination very often, so I assume it can attack something, kill it with the Poisonous, and then it can attack a second time and kill a second thing. Stone Skin Basilisk is what it's called. Yeah, and it's a beast on top of that. This is definitely playable in a hunter deck or a beast deck, as long as you don't have anything better. Next we have a 3 mana, 0 attack, 4 health minion called the Toothy Chest. At the start of your turn, set this minion attack to 4, playing this on the third turn actually has a good chance of it surviving, so that it would be a 4/4 on the fourth turn, which, okay, I guess that kind of makes sense. It's not the best card in the world, but it seems maybe playable if you've got... next we have a 3 mana, 3 attack, 3 health demon, which this might be the first demon ever playable that's not a warlock, and I applaud that move. We should have more demons and crazy cards just as neutral cards instead of making them specific to classes. It's kind of boring when you get a daily challenge that says play 10 demons and you're like, oh, so I have to play the warlock now. It would be nicer if I could play whatever I want to play. Ideally, if somebody just wants to play the mage, they should be able to make decks with just a mage to get all the daily quests done. Let's see, Battlecry swap the attack and the health of all other minions. That's actually rather nice because there's a decent number of cards that have 0 attack and then some health, and then taunt, like Mirror Image, which is a 2/0/2 creatures. You play this on the third turn after a mage has played Mirror Image, then it becomes a 2/0 creature, which means it dies immediately. And just, this is definitely a card that would screw up strategies of other players. So definitely one worth considering. Next we have a 3 mana, 2 attack, 2 health legendary minion called Zola the Gorgon. Battlecry, choose a friendly minion, add a golden copy of it to your hand. Now there's no real reason to have a golden copy of a card in your hand. So, like, having a regular copy versus a golden copy doesn't change anything. I think they're just thematically doing that because the Gorgon is turning it to stone, but in this case it's turning it to gold, and it's still the same card. Interesting. That's probably a card worth playing, but the golden part of it's crazy. Next we have a 4 mana, 5 attack, 1 health minion called Cursed Disciple. Death Rattle summon a 5/1 Revenant. So, not the greatest card in the world with only 1 health, but you get kind of 2 chances to do 5 damage to the enemy for 4 mana. So it's something you might consider. Next we have a 4 mana, 3 attack, 4 health dragon called Ebon Dragonsmith, which he doesn't really look like a dragon to me, but I think they're going to play fast and loose with the categorization. Battlecry, reduce the cost of a random weapon in your hand by 2. You'd have to play a very specific weapon deck to want to play that. I'm not seeing a lot of cards that are just completely awful. There's a lot of cards that have a very few scenarios where they would be the right choice, but there are at least a couple of scenarios where they are the right choice. And I think that's an indication that, at least so far, this seems like it's a pretty good expansion. And that's before we even see the interesting Catacombs part of it. Next we have a 4 mana, 5 attack, 6 health dragon called the Hoarding Dragon. Death Rattle, give your opponent 2 coins. This is a cheap dragon, and if you're playing a dragon deck, you would almost certainly play it, but I definitely don't like that Death Rattle idea. There's no good reason you would want to give your opponent 2 coins unless you were going to try to get 2 coins yourself via that panda bear that gives you a copy of each coin, each spell your opponent plays, and vice versa. Next we have a 4 mana, 3 attack, 6 health Kobold Monk. Your hero can't be targeted for spells or hero powers. So would that mean that the Hunter's hero power that does 2 damage to your opponent, would that work or would it not work? Or is it just the mage hunting hero power that you wouldn't work on? This is certainly one to play with just to understand exactly how it works. Otherwise, it's a 3/6, so it could be a 4/5 or a 5/4 if you moved the numbers around for 4 mana, so it's not a terrible card anyways. Next we have a 4 mana, 3 attack, 3 health beast called the Shimmering Courser. Only you can target this with spells and hero powers. Interesting. That's a new concept. So this beast can't be hit by spells or hero powers of the enemy, but you can still beef it up. It's a little weak at 3/3 for 4 mana for the special ability. So I'm not sure you'd actually ever play this, because I can't imagine you'd play a deck designed around powering and beefing up a minion, and it would be this minion. Like, this really feels like one of those cards that if it was one you got and you had a very limited selection of cards, you would play it, but otherwise you wouldn't. Next we have a 4 mana, 4 attack, 4 health minion called the Shroom Brewer. Battlecry, restore 4 health. There's nothing wrong with this card. That's a good equal value. It's actually quite a bonus. 4 health restored for almost completely being free. That's definitely one to play. You could replace any 4 mana creature or 4 attack or 4 health creature you have right now with this, if it doesn't have an ability, and you'd be better off. Next we have a 4 mana, 2 attack, 2 health demon, seeing more demons again than the neutral cards, called the Sneaky Devil. Stealth, your other minions have +1 attack. This is a decent card. It's a little expensive, definitely, but giving your other minions +1 attack and being in stealth, so it would be very difficult to kill this guy and get rid of his +1 attack, is actually very useful. So even at 2 mana more expensive than it should be, I still might consider playing that card if I've got nothing better. Interesting. This one is 4 mana with an amazing 20 attack and 20 health legendary card called the Darkness. Starts dormant. Battle cry. Shuffle 3 candles into the enemy deck. When drawn, this awakens. So I wonder if this guy says, "Are you afraid of the dark?" when you summon it, or something like that. You will be afraid of the dark. Because we've heard somebody say that phrase, I don't know who, in previous cards. This is an amazingly overpowered card. If you get this legendary, play this legendary. There's ways also to force your opponent to draw cards, which now you have a end game to forcing your opponent to draw cards that makes a lot more sense than just trying to destroy their cards or make them run out and fatigue a lot earlier. They're very well, they call that milling when you force your opponent to draw cards. You now have an end game to a milling deck, which is really cool. Next we have a 5 mana, 4 attack, 4 health elemental called the Arcane Tyrant. Costs 0 if you cast a spell that costs 5 or more this turn. So play this on the 5th turn for free almost. Not a bad mage deck card. Mages with their elemental ability make a lot of sense, but Yep. Yeah, that's a decent card, even though it's a little weak, with only 4 and 5, 4 health and 4 attack for 5 mana. Next, we have a 5 mana, 5 attack, 5 health minion called Corrosive Sludge. Battlecry: destroy your opponent's weapon. This is just a improved version of the other sludge card that destroys your opponent's weapon. It's taken them a long time to make a improved version of that, thus allowing you to have maybe 4 cards that destroy your opponent's weapon. But clearly there's a reason for that, because we've seen in each of the other expansions they've been given some crazy weapons, some of which you wouldn't even want to have, and that almost certainly was to balance out this card and maybe some other cards that we see later on. Next, we have a 5 mana, 2 attack, 2 health minion called the Fungal Mancer. Battlecry: give adjacent minions +2/+2, which effectively would make this a 6/6 minion for 5. But it has the requirement of having 2 other minions on the field on the 5th turn, which you can't always guarantee, so this is a card I'd probably not play. Next, we have a 5 mana, 1 attack, 1 health minion called the Forbelong Mossbinder. Battlecry: transform a friendly minion into a 6/6 elemental. Now, doing this on the 5th turn is a little iffy, honestly. I don't know if I would want to play this either, because again, this requires you to have a different minion on the field, and let's say it was a 1/1 minion and you change it to a 6/6 elemental. Okay, that's good, that's an improvement. That effectively gives you a 7/7 combined minion for 5 mana. But it requires you to have another minion on the field, and for that minion to only be 1/1 attack on the 4th turn, which is not as likely as you would think. So I probably wouldn't play this one. Next, we have a 5 mana, 3 attack, 3 health creature called Green Jelly. At the end of your turn, summon a 1/2 ooze with taunt. It's still a little weak to play this, but I suppose if you've got nothing better to do to play, you would play something like this. Generally, I'd skip this for something that synergizes and makes more sense. So, next we have a 5 mana, 2 attack, 4 health creature called the Guild Recruiter. Battlecry: recruit a minion that costs 4 or less. 4 or less as a recruiting option is probably not a great move, particularly since I assume this is just recruiting a random minion, and if I understand recruiting right, that would just put the card in your hand, which, if I'm understanding all of that right, which maybe I'm not, this is actually a pretty awful card. So tentatively, I think this is an awful card. You wouldn't want to play it. Next, we have a 5 mana, 1 attack, 5 health minion called the Trog Gloomeater. Taunt and poisonous. I'm not sure this is really worth it either. Maybe, maybe not. The taunt and the poisonous element makes sense, but playing this on the 5th turn, you're really only going to kill 1, maybe 2 other enemy minions before this one's destroyed. Next, we have a 6 mana, 4 attack, 10 health minion called the Hungry Etin. I think that's what that is. As taunt and a battlecry, summon a random 2-cost minion for your opponent. It's not really a problem that you're summoning a random 2-cost minion for your opponent. At 6 mana for 10 health with taunt, it's probably worth it. 4 attack, maybe a little low, but no, that's probably a good card. Next, we have a 6 mana, 4 attack, 4 health minion called Spiteful Summoner. Battlecry: reveal spell from your deck, summon a random minion with the same cost. So Here is a great card for a synergy. Not for a mage deck or any deck that's going to play spells. But if you were to do all minions in your deck except for one 10 cost spell, and then you played this on your 6th turn, then a 10 cost minion at random, a random 10 cost minion, all of which are pretty good, would be summoned. So even though this is only for attack and 4 health, this is totally playable if you have room to put in 2 cards. You put in 2 copies of this and 1 copy of a 10 cost spell, and then you can play this on the 6th and 7th turn and end up with 2 10 cost minions for effectively only 12 mana plus those 2 minions health and attack. Next we have a 7 mana 5 attack 5 health creature called the beast minion that is called the Corridor Creeper. Costs 1 less whenever a minion dies while this is in your hand. Not a bad card to have in your deck because you draw this early. At least 2 things will have died in by the time you played it on the 5th turn, and then you'll have a 5 mana 5 attack beast. If more things died, which in a hunter deck, beasts do tend to die really quickly and often in large quantities, you could get this down to a 0 probably by the 4th turn and just play them for free. Scavenging Hyena would also synergize well with a card like this, 1 step removed. Next we have a 7 mana 3 attack 3 health minion called the Silver Vanguard Battlecry Recruit, and 8 cost minion. Not worth it really. It's too weak, too low health to play something like that as far as I think. Next we have an 8 mana 4 attack 7 health creature called the Grand Archivist. At the end of your turn, cast a spell from your deck, targets chosen randomly. Again, this is a card that if you put the right spells in your deck on a mage deck, this might work very well. Also, if you played this with the Warlock and you had spells that say something along the line of destroy a minion, or if it's a demon, give it +2/+2. If you're only playing demons, you would have a significant advantage there, because if it randomly targets one of your characters, it would beef up your character. If it randomly targets your opponents, it will damage your opponent. Maybe not play this outside of the Warlock or the Mage decks though. Maybe not. So cast a spell from your deck, so you know what spells. You'd have to do way more planning than most people would do for something like this. Really think out what cards you'd have in your deck. Next we have an 8 mana 5 attack 5 health legendary minion called the King's Toggle Swaddle. Battlecry: swap decks with your opponent, give them a ransom spell to swap back. I wonder how much the ransom spell cost. And is there a way perhaps to eliminate all the cards in your deck so you have no deck, play this on the 8th turn, and then have it so your opponent has no deck? And I mean, at that they would just pay the spell, which would, even if the spell is 10 mana, that's not terrible. I'd be sacrificing an entire turn almost to get your deck back. This is one of those cards that you're really going to have to play with to see how useful or good they actually are. Next is the card that everybody got for free, Marin the Fox. 8 mana, 6 attack, 6 health. It's a legendary card. Summon a 0/8 treasure chest for your opponent, break it for awesome loot. I haven't put it in any of my decks, and I haven't seen anybody play with it super successfully. The treasures are a little too random, and it's just a little too much work to get anything from it. Next we have an 8 mana, 7 attack, 7 health beast called the Violet Worm. Death Rattle summons 7/1/1 grubs. Not terrible. This is kind of the opposite of one of the dragons that summons 6/1/1 wisps in on the field when you summon it via battle cry, so it's just a death rattle equivalent of that. And there is a card that doubles death rattles. I don't see how that would do anything, honestly. So because you can only have 7 minions on your field, and it would be a bug if you somehow figured out a way to have more than 7 minions on the field. So yeah, I guess mostly just the fact that it's a beast might prove to make this an interesting choice if you have nothing better to play around the 8 mana level. Next we have a 9 mana, 2 attack, 4 health. That's really low. Minion called Dragon Hatcher. At the end of your turn, recruit a dragon. And I again think recruiting means putting a dragon card in your hand. So I don't think I'd ever want to play that card. That's a little too low. Play that on your 9th turn, almost certainly it'd be dead before you got to your 10th turn. Next we have a 9 mana, 5 attack, 5 health creature minion called Master Oakheart. It's a legendary card. Battlecry, recruit a 1, 2, and 3 attack minion. So at the very least, even though this is really weak still for 9 mana at 5 attack and 5 health, at least this time it gives you 3 cards when you summon it, but still probably not worth playing. And finally we have a 9 mana, 4 attack, 12 health dragon called the Sleeping Dragon with Taunt. And there's nothing really special about it. It's a little low on the attack, but it's high on the health. So if we took that away and made it a 6/10, and then took 2 more away and we made it an 8/8. Yeah. Effectively, this is the equivalent of an 8 attack, 8 health for 9 with Taunt. It's still a little expensive, but maybe because it's a dragon, if you're making a dragon deck. Now I want to do, before we wrap up here, something to just show. I feel like there's too many legendaries in this expansion for no real reason. That's the one thing that I'm coming away from on this expansion. There's no, as far as I can see, major strategies or synergies being introduced, or ideas of recruiting and leveling up. And everybody got a weapon, but most of the weapons aren't worth playing. But above all that stuff, there's just too many legendaries. I think half of these could easily have not been a legendary. This one, where you get 10 mana crystals, should be legendary. You shouldn't be able to have 2 of those. After playing a minion, summon a copy of it. Not really necessary, needs to be a legendary. If your deck has no minions, fill this hand with hunter spells. No reason that needs to be a legendary at all. Battlecry and Death Rattle, recruit a beast. No real reason that needs to be a legendary. At the end of your turn, draw 3 cards. For 6 mana, that doesn't need to be legendary. Let's see, summon a 5/5 dragon for each spell you cast this game. Maybe not. At 3 attack and 3 health, you probably could have gotten away with it without being the legendary. I feel like they just slapped legendary on some cards instead of started from the concept of saying this is going to be a legendary. Give a minion in your hand +4/+2, re-equip it when it dies. Maybe that needs to be a legendary. Cast a spell. Each spell you cast on your minions that died on your minions this game on this one. Maybe that should be a legendary. After you cast 3 spells, summon a 5/5 dragon. Because half of these legendary weapons particularly don't need to be legendaries, because you can't have 2 of the cards on the field at the same time anyways. If you could play a Dragon Soul and then play a Dragon Soul again, it would destroy the original Dragon Soul. So there's no reason for a weapon to be a legendary, almost. Your opponent takes 2 turns, then you take 2 turns. Maybe that should be a legendary. Some of these make sense, some of these don't. Knife Bane, I think, shouldn't be a legendary. After a friend or minion dies, add a 1/1 copy of it to your hand. It costs 1. There's no reason for that to really be a legendary. Return your other minions to your hand. They cost 1. That probably should be. After your hero attacks, discover a spell and cast it with random targets. That doesn't need to be a legendary. At the start of your turn, summon a demon from your hand. You could have had 2 of those at 5 mana. This one, Rin the First Disciple, I definitely want to get that and play it. Hopefully I do. But it definitely should be a legendary, since that moves you down a very long path to, I think, ultimate victory. At the end of your turn, summon a random minion with a cost equal to your armor. You probably could have 2 of those easily. After your hero attacks, recruit a minion. That doesn't need to be legendary. So a significant number of the 10 legendaries for the heroes didn't really need to be legendary. And then choose a friendly minion, add a golden copy of it to your hand. That doesn't need to be legendary. The darkness does need to be legendary. Swap decks with your opponent, probably should be legendary. Summon a 0/8 treasure chest for your opponent. That doesn't really need to be legendary. And recruit 1, 2, and 3 minions. That really doesn't need to be legendary. So there's 15 legendary cards in this expansion, and I would say at least 8 of them don't need to be legendary, and they're only being marked as legendary so you buy more packs. I am not a fan of that greediness. If anything, I would hope that Hearthstone would start being more generous instead of more greedy, and it doesn't really feel like that was the case. They could have easily set it up so you got 1 legendary for each hero in this expansion, and 5 neutral legendaries, then would have only been 15. 14, or even less. And since you are only guaranteed a legendary every 15 packs you open, calculate that out for a second. Like, there's 9 minions, they have 2 each, so that's 18 legendaries plus 5 is 23 legendaries. 23 legendaries times 50 packs. The maximum amount of packs you would have to buy to get all of the legendaries here would be, let's see, 1,020? Am I doing this right? Yeah, 1,200 packs. The maximum number of packs. Now you probably get it quicker than that, and you're guaranteed 1 legendary in the first 10 for every new expansion. But at the expensive amount of $1 a pack, of which maybe the price has even gone up. Like now to buy 2 packs costs $3, so you're paying $1.50 a pack. $1,500? Well over $1,500? Almost $2,000? Maybe my math is wrong here, but maybe it's not. Several $100s worth of, at the very least, several $100s worth of things. And maybe you'd be better off buying the old Gods cards, or Mean Streets of Gadgesan, or on Guru. If anything, I'm thinking maybe I want to buy some of the Knights of the Frozen Throne, because the hero replacement cards and the quest cards. So I believe quest cards are from on Guru, and the hero replacement cards are definitely for the Frozen Throne. Yeah. So if you don't have any of all of these, which I don't, maybe you'd want to get those. Those are slightly more interesting than what I've seen. Or maybe you want to get, let's see if I can find one, hero replacement cards, because those do some crazy replacement things. And I don't have all of them. But for my audience, I will end up buying almost certainly 50 packs plus of the new expansion on my main account, and then 50 more packs for my Asian and European account tomorrow, if you're watching this live. That's it for this recording. Not super blown away by the new expansion, but also not really disappointed. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on basically any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.